Hi, I'm reading in Bible Story Volume 2, and we're at Part 3, Story 2, On to Freedom. Let me flip this around where words won't confuse me. As morning dawned, it was found all Egypt in a deep mourning. The angel of death had entered every home. Thousands of bodies awaited funeral, but thousands of bodies awaited burial. From that of the crown prince in the palace to the firstborn of the humblest boatman on the Nile. Meanwhile, in the land of Goshen, all was bustle and excitement. Most of the Hebrews had been awake all night. Now, as the news spread that Pharaoh had at last agreed to let them go, their joy knew no bounds. Eagerly they clapped one another's hand and cried, "We are free, we are free." Some gloated over the piles of gold and silver ornaments they had collected from the Egyptians, wondering what they would do with so much wealth. Others knelt in prayer and thanked God for his protecting care through the night. But there was no time to dally. Pharaoh might change his mind again, as he had 9 times already. If they were going to leave Egypt, they must do so at once while the Egyptians were burying the dead. We do have an illustration. It's by Herbert Rudin. And this is what we got. Happy picture, isn't it? Okay, and then it says, the great day of deliverance from Egyptian slavery had come at last, and there was great excitement. Everyone was eager to start on the journey through the wilderness to Canaan. All got little happy faces and everything. Okay. Moses already had told the leaders of Israel where everybody was to meet, and soon all were making their way toward the palace. This place. Making their way toward this place. Before sunrise, thousands upon thousands of people were on the move, leaving their homes for good. Wagons drawn by oxen were loaded with tents, bedding, pots for cooking, jars of food, bundles of clothes, and other things they wanted to take along. Some mothers had babies strapped to their backs. Others had their needing thoughts. Needing thoughts. That's what it says. Needing thoughts. Bound up on their clothes on their shoulders. Had you been there, you might have seen a little boy carrying his pet puppy under one arm, trying to lead a young lamb with the other. You might have seen a little girl carrying a doll in one hand and holding a baby sister's hand with the other. For I am sure little girls had dolls back there just as they do now. All kinds of people, old and young, grandpas and tiny tots, were in that moving crowd. Mixed up with them were animals of all sorts: cows, bulls, donkeys, sheep, goats, and dogs by the dozen. What the dogs did were what the dogs did when they all got together, I leave it up to your imagination. As Moses stood watching the gathering of the people with their flocks and herds, he may he may well have wondered how he would ever get so large a company safely to Canaan. Now it was that his early training in the royal palace came in useful. Part of his education as prince had been in the army, so he knew how to handle men and keep large numbers of people in order. Working through the leaders of Israel, he soon had a crowd forming into line and along, forming into line and moving out along the route he planned to take them. Gradually, a large procession took shape as the Hebrews started out for Canaan, 5 in a rank. It must have taken hours just to get everything ready, for there were 600,000 on foot that were men, besides children, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And that wasn't all. Moses soon noticed that many people who were not Hebrew were joining in the procession. The Bible called them the mixed multitude. Some of those, no doubt, were Egyptian servants who saw a chance to get away from their masters. Others may have Others may have been young people just looking for adventure. Whoever they were, they insist on going along. And what a lot of trouble they caused later on. Many a time Moses must have wished he had stopped them at the beginning. At last, the whole great caravan was on its way. So long was it that those at the head could scarcely see those at the rear. Slowly, ever slowly, it inched forward, gradually leading behind Ramses and other cities that the Hebrews had helped build. Smaller and smaller they grew, Smaller and smaller grew the pyramids until they were nothing more than specks on the horizon. If you ever watch the Ten Commandments, this pretty much is in there. Pretty much the same, if you ever watched it. And it's a good movie. And it basically it's a 7-hour movie, but it's all this. Okay, let me get back. No doubt the young people and the children wanted to travel much faster, but it was impossible. Those were There were so many babies and no baby carriages in which to wheel them. There were so many sheep and goats and calves that they couldn't hurry. No doubt some men had a great deal of trouble trying to keep the flocks and herds moving at all. There would always be a cow or a sheep wandering off by itself or having to be chased back into line. Somewhere in the procession, there was something that created quite a big excitement. It was a coffin. Among all his preparation for the Exodus, Moses had not forgotten Joseph's request that his bones be taken to Canaan. At first, nobody felt tired, not even the children. They were all so happy and excited to be leaving Egypt that they forgot how worried they really were. They all been so busy getting ready for the journey and finding their right place in the possession that they had no time to think that they were now homeless, without a place to sleep at night. They had they had been too busy also to worry about the future, or how they could get food and water in the desert through which they would have to pass. Even now, all they wanted was to put as many miles as possible between themselves and the Pharaoh, just in case he thought he should change his mind and come after them. But as evening drew on and the children got tired and hungry, the fathers, and it stops right there, and they got an illustration of the possession of them walking. Nice, pretty thing on the bottom. And I'll get back to the story. The fathers and mothers began to wonder about some of these things. How long would the journey take? When would they be able to settle down in their new homes in Canaan? Was there enough food for everybody? How about water? Would they meet any enemies along the way? Would there be wild animals in the desert? Suddenly there was a shout that seemed to echo all down the long line of people. A cloud! Look, a cloud! They said they had been enveloped in clouds of dust all day, kicking up the herd by the herds of cattle, but this was different. This was more like a pillar of a cloud that went straight up, away ahead of the procession. Yes, the cloud, Mama, cried the little boys and little girls. See the cloud? I see it, said 1,000 worried mothers. But what is it? What does it mean? Then word passed down the line from Moses that God was in the cloud and would lead his people all the way they had to go. In darkness, as darkness came on, the cloud glowed with a light so beautiful that people called it a pillar of fire. And it was wonderful. It was wonderfully cheering. Yeah, it was wonderfully cheering that first night away from home to know that God was so near. There was no need to worry any more. No need for any fear for about the future. If the great God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was leading them, all would be well. He would care. He would care for everything. He would bring them to Canaan safe and sound. And then, of course, has the illustration of them resting a little bit in the pillar of fire. And just think about it. Probably was a tornado. Looked like a tornado. And it was a cloud. I mean, you would always see it like this. That's in this illustration, but a pillar, tornado kind of looks like a pillar. I don't know. My brain's just shooting off in there. Okay, that was part 3, story 2. We'll get to the next one here in just a bit. So I'm gonna rest for a little bit before I start on the next one, and I'll see you in a bit.